Palantir has a long history working with sensitive data. Sometimes it's mission critical data, data which can have impact on humans' life, whether that's in the theatre of healthcare or the theatre of war. When companies brainstorm how they're going to implement LLMs or who should be implementing them, is there another business better positioned than Palantir to do that because of their track record of 2 decades working on some of the most sensitive data sets in the world?
No, there's not. There's literally no company in the world that's better at managing sensitive data. It's just, and like, this is not just saying it in hyperbole. This is Palantir is one of 3 companies in the world that has IL level 6 security clearance, which means the highest level of confidential data that they've been able to keep confidential and secure is Palantir, Microsoft, and Amazon. And Microsoft, Amazon, obviously companies with massive resources. Palantir is just a small $30 billion company that's been able to do it. And also the contracts they've gotten with the United States. I mean, there's so many to name, but like one of the ones I think people don't talk about is the $89.9 million NNSA contract, the working with the Nuclear Security Administration. So they got $90 million to like protect the nuclear codes and do a bunch of data ingestion stuff for the nuclear administration, which is like insane. Like you're trusting a company to make sure that the nuclear weapons in the United States of America don't go rogue, which is important. And so like, yeah, I don't know any other company on the planet that has been working with the level of sensitive data. I mean, there's companies that are bigger that have worked with data, that have worked with the government, but I don't know. I mean, for all intents and purposes, Palantir is the one that found Osama bin Laden. And so if that's the case, like, I don't think there's any company better than Palantir at sensitive data.
Also, there's not the same conflict of interest there could be with, an advertising company. If it's Google who've got all this data and they're advertising to you, even if they did keep it separate and, they could prove that, etc., one could argue there is a conflict of interest there. With Palantir, there doesn't really seem to be that conflict of interest.
Yeah, no one trusts them. I mean, no one trusts Google, Facebook. And at the end of the day, consumers use them because it's convenient, but we don't trust them. And so, like, I mean, even if Google built a personal LLM-based, consumer-based product for me, and I gave everything I know to Google, I don't know how comfortable I would be with that. And then, yeah, I mean, Google and Facebook, they're all still trying to work in China. They're all still trying to work in Russia. I mean, they were in Russia before the Ukraine war. So it doesn't seem like there's anyone other than Palantir.
And how long do you think it's going to take until AIP starts hitting the numbers? And if it doesn't start hitting the numbers, when would you be concerned? And obviously that's a nuanced question because it depends what the rhetoric is from the company. But, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think Q3, Q4, 2023, we should start to see a little bit more analysis on what's going on with AIP. I think Q2, we're not going to get that much. I think Q2, we want to see customer count growing, even if we don't see revenue acceleration, because that means what is Palantir's model? You land there, you expand there, and then you scale. So you get in there, you give them the software, they count as a customer, right? They might pay like a little deposit. It's not going to be real revenue we can recognize, but we can count them as a customer. And then over the next 12 months, they end up becoming a legitimate customer and we get revenue generation from that. So if we see the customer count growing, which could be kind of wild, like Q2, we might see like, you could imagine if Karp is right about all this inbound they're getting, and then Palantir's strategy for selling is like, we got 100 people that reached out. We're going to give the software to 90 of them. So we're going to add 90 customers in one quarter. We're not going to accept any money from them, but the goal is to trick Wall Street into realizing that this is coming. You guys have to be smart enough to not sell the stock because this is one metric you really need to take into account. And then Wall Street gets to do whatever Wall Street gets to do. But if that's the case, then Q2 could be phenomenal, even if the revenue is not there. Or the opposite could happen, whereas we have less customers and then, guidance suggests that we're going to get them more. I think if by the end of Q4, we don't see a really nice acceleration of customers and revenue, which it would be reported in like February of 2024, then it might be a little concerning to see what's going on. But a lot of it depends on guidance, and a lot of it depends on if interest rates are going to get cut. So there's stuff going on in the macro, but I think by the end of Q3, Q4, we should see a decent amount of revenue from AIP.
And have you had or got any inclination as to how big these contract sizes are going to be? With Foundry, we're used to $50 million, $100 million contracts. Are we expecting something similar with AIP, or will it be smaller, or is it still unknown?
And so the question is, what is the size of the contracts we're going to get?
Yeah, and of course that's going to depend on the size of the company they're implementing it with. But are we expecting these big ticket contracts with AIP?
Yes, because the thing about AIP is you're implementing an entire infrastructure of artificial intelligence into a company, which is really hard to do. Yeah, you have to do it in a really unique way. You have to essentially consult with them and work with them day in and day out for, I would imagine, at least a couple months. And then you have to also plug in all their data into a LLM that allows the data to be secure and confidently trained and all that stuff. So I think it's a process that results in a pretty decent contract. What I would hope Palantir can do, which is what they've been saying for the past couple of years, is modularize some of their products, especially in Foundry, and then allow it to be downloaded and paid for as you go and as you use the product, which they're doing in a little bit of Japan. But if they can really scale the basic parts of their product, basic databases and analyses to customers doing $1 million a year, not customers doing 500 million a year, then that would be very valuable. But for now, I think AIP is definitely going to be in the tens of millions in terms of contract size.
Scalability has always been a contentious topic for Palantir. There are some natural hurdles to jump through. Implementing an LLM, there is going to be some consultancy. You're probably going to need forward deployed engineers. But do you think AIP will be more scalable than Foundry or the same?
I think it should be scaling way better than Foundry. I mean, because every company in the world needs, and this has been Karp's thesis, every company in the world is going to need some level of artificial intelligence to remain competitive with other companies. And the reason for this is because if your competitor is using AI and LLMs to be able to access data and be more efficient in how they do their business, and you're not, then it's like they're using the internet and you're not. And if this is the fourth industrial revolution of how we understand information, which I think all signs are pointing to, yes, that is true. That's not just fake. This is a real market opportunity. Then the company that if Verizon's using AI and AT&T is not using AI, if BP is using AI and Exxon's not using AI, it's like, well, these companies have to use the product. They have to figure out what is their AI strategy. And so every company, big and small, is trying to figure out what is their AI strategy, what is their AI moat. If it's like content creators, right? If I'm using ChatGPT to help me become a better content creator and you're not, and I'm more efficient and more effective and the videos are getting better, then it's like, well, why don't you try using that as well and see if it can help you get to a certain level. So if every business needs to use it, then the scale, the rate of scale to me is not what I'm worried about. It's more so them actually getting the deals. Like, again, the market is there for them to scale the crap out of this thing. It's just them getting in the door and making those deals get done, which sales has historically been bad. So I don't have a lot of faith in it yet. And I'm kind of waiting for the numbers to prove me wrong on that.
What I'm also theorizing is we could see some sort of explosive growth with AIP, and I wonder how that could trickle down into Foundry and Apollo, and then that could be a growth driver as well as companies. We give them the gateway drug with AIP, and then all of a sudden the operating systems, Palantir is basically just running the show across the board with Foundry and Apollo as well. And I wonder what impact we could then see with that. I'm hoping we get more cohort data as well. Again, we've not had cohort data for a while, but it could be very interesting to see how that develops over, that'd be a sort of 1, 3, 5 year sort of progress.
Yeah, I think Apollo is one of the products that we don't talk about a lot, and it has so much potential in terms of what I've started to understand more about it. I think if AIP is the gateway drug that gets them into the ecosystem, gets it sticky, it's hard for them to leave, and then they see the other stuff that we can do to make their business more effective, efficient, etc., which Apollo is a big part of that, then yeah, it should have a massive trickle-down effect to an extent to be able to allow these businesses to adopt other standards. I mean, we saw at AIP, Cisco is using Apollo, then you got Cleveland Clinic using AIP, and there's just so many different use cases of their software, which is the interesting thing about being a shareholder, because even though all of us have never really engaged with the software, we're reading from these clients what they're doing to use the software in a way that really does transform their business, not just adds a little bit more efficiencies, but actually transforms the company. And that's exciting to me. And I think if that's the case, then Palantir is a full set of software products that can be implemented into a business, again, this operating system. And AIP is kind of the drug that gets them into seeing the rest of